Somewhere in the 1530s, a Spanish longboat noses toward a pale smear of coral in a heaving blue world, and two creatures stagger from the surf screaming, "We are Christians, we are men," as the oarsmen freeze in terror and try to turn away. The moment hangs on the beach like a breath held too long, because what the sailors are seeing hardly looks human. Bodies blackened like old leather, hair falling to the waist, beards tangled like seaweed, bristles flashing in the sun. This is the true story that inspired legend long before fiction ever tried to match it. The first real Robinson Crusoe, the man history remembers as Pedro Serrano. Our story begins in Seville, where Pedro Luis Serrano is born to the tide, to rope and pitch, and the smell of salt in the alleys, to the promise that fortune lies west across the bright edge of the world. He is no admiral commanding fleets, but a working captain of small coastal vessels, ferrying goods and passengers between the new Spanish settlements of the Caribbean, where the maps are uncertain and the spaces between them are filled with danger. The route he knows best runs from Havana to Cartagena de Indias, a hard diagonal across reefs and rumour, out with European goods and home again with gold, hides, and the whisper of empire. One season, historians argue whether it was 1526 or 1528, the sky darkens without warning, the sea turns to mountains, and Serrano's small ship is swallowed by a hurricane so violent it tears masts like branches and flings prayers into the wind. The storm lasts for hours or perhaps days, and when the waves finally settle, the ship has been torn apart, its timbers scattered across the sea, its crew vanished beneath the foam. Only Serrano remains, clinging to a splinter of wood in a world of grey water and deafening silence, a man adrift between death and a horizon that never moves. At dawn, he glimpses a low shadow against the lighter sky and kicks toward it with the last of his strength, dragging himself ashore onto a strip of white coral sand barely wide enough to hold the wreck of his body. When he wakes, the storm is gone, and what surrounds him is not an island, but a mistake. A ring of coral so low that waves spill across it even in calm weather. A place with no trees, no grass, no shade, no sound, except the hiss of wind and the endless roar of surf. He walks its perimeter and finds nothing living, only the glare of the sun and the certainty that this place offers no food, no water, and no mercy. Thirst comes first, that slow panic that begins behind the tongue and spreads like fire through the body, and Serrano stumbles across the sand searching for anything that might save him. In the shallow tide pools he finds small crabs, shrimp and limpets clinging to stone, and with his knife, miraculously still at his belt, he pries them free and eats them raw, the taste of salt and sand barely masking the joy of survival. The sky remains empty of clouds, the heat merciless, and by the second day his lips crack and his throat burns. But then the ocean gives him his first miracle. A sea turtle the size of a barrel drags itself ashore to lay its eggs, ancient and slow, unaware of the desperate man watching from the dunes. Serrano rushes forward, seizes its shell, and with all his strength flips it onto its back, knowing this is his only chance at life. He cuts its throat with his knife and drinks the warm blood as it flows, salty and metallic, but filled with enough moisture to push death a little further away. He slices the meat into long strips, laying them on the sun-baked coral to dry into a kind of jerky the Spanish call tasayo, food that will last for days beneath the pitiless sky. Then he notices the empty turtle shell, gleaming like polished bone, and realizes it can hold rainwater if the sky ever gives it. He sets out more shells as bowls, and when a storm finally comes, he watches them fill with the first fresh water he has tasted since the ship went down, covering some with other shells to slow the sun's theft. For the first time since the wreck, he allows himself to believe he might live. But surviving is not the same as being saved, and Serrano knows that without a signal, no ship will ever find him. He needs fire, yet the island offers no wood, no flint, nothing but coral and seaweed. So he dives again and again beneath the waves, searching the reef for anything harder than coral. And finally, his hands close around small dark stones that feel like the ones sailors once struck in Spain. On the beach, he strikes stone against the back of his knife until sparks leap, and when one catches in a rag of dried cloth, he blows until smoke curls upward and fire is born. That flame becomes his companion, his protector, and his god. He builds a shelter of turtle shells to guard it, feeds it with every scrap of driftwood and bone the tide offers, and even in storms, he shields it with his body rather than let it die. Around that fire, his world begins to take shape again. Each morning he checks his traps for crabs and turtles, gathers shellfish at low tide, dries meat, and stores rainwater in his shells. He prays aloud to keep his voice alive, reciting every verse he remembers, speaking to himself because silence feels too much like death. Weeks blur into months, months into years. His clothes rot to threads and disappear. His hair grows down his back. His beard thickens to his chest. His skin darkens and toughens until even he no longer recognizes the man he was. He learns the rhythms of the island, the turtles that come with the moon, the sudden tempests that wash away his work, the intervals of despair that visit between each passing ship. When a sail appears on the horizon, he piles seaweed onto the fire to make smoke thick and black, shouting until his throat bleeds. But the ships pass on, unmoved, and the smoke drifts away like another prayer unanswered. After 3 years alone, he wakes one morning to find footprints on the sand that are not his own. In the distance stands another figure, dark and thin, hair wild in the wind. At first, Serrano believes he is seeing a demon sent to torment him, and the other man, just as frightened, turns and runs. They circle the small island in terror until Serrano finds his courage and cries out, "Jesus, deliver me from the devil!" And the stranger answers in broken Spanish and then in Latin, reciting the Apostles' Creed, proof no demon could give. They approach each other slowly, and when they see human faces beneath the hair and sunburn, they fall into each other's arms and weep. The stranger's name is lost to history, but his story mirrors Serrano's. A shipwreck on a nearby reef, a single survivor clinging to driftwood, and smoke on the horizon that led him here. Together they begin again, sharing water, food and fire, working side by side to make their prison livable. But isolation breeds tension, and within days they quarrel bitterly over labor and fairness, voices rising until they nearly come to blows. In anger, they divide the tiny island in half, each man claiming his own side, refusing to speak or help the other. For days they live within sight but out of reach, until the absurdity of it breaks them both, and one morning they cross the invisible border, apologize, and embrace. From that day forward, they are a single will divided between two bodies. They set a routine to keep their minds steady. One gathers food while the other tends the fire. One repairs the shelter while the other watches the horizon. They use pieces of iron washed ashore, relics from another wreck, to shape crude tools, and even attempt to build a small boat from driftwood, bound with fibers and sealed with turtle fat. But the first wave tears it apart. So they turn their effort to building upward, stacking coral and stones into a tower that lifts their fire higher, a beacon visible for miles across the sea. When hurricanes sweep in, they climb this tower and cling to each other as waves crash over their heads, their fire buried under shells but never allowed to die. The years reshape them into something half myth, half man, bodies covered in hair, faces carved by salt and sun, eyes bright with endurance and madness. Again and again they see ships, raise smoke, shout until hoarse, and watch hope dissolve into the horizon. 4 or 5 more years pass this way, until they have lived together on that sand for nearly 8 years in total. Then, one morning, a Spanish ship sails closer to Serrano Bank than any before, and a lookout spots smoke rising from a reef that no chart names. The captain orders a boat lowered with several sailors and a notary to record whatever they find, because in those days, even miracles needed paperwork. As the boat nears the shore, the sailors freeze. The shapes before them look monstrous. 2 naked, hair-covered figures kneeling in smoke. They begin to row away in terror, certain these are demons born from the sea. But Serrano and his companion cry out in Spanish and in Latin, shouting prayers, naming Christ, calling themselves men. The captain, hearing holy words, commands the boat to turn back. When the sailors land, they find not monsters, but men, scarred, gaunt, trembling, their beards to their stomachs and hair to their waists. Serrano collapses to his knees and kisses the boat in gratitude, weeping into the wood, and some of the sailors weep with him. The notary records their names and appearance, and for the first time in nearly a decade, the 2 castaways are carried away from their island prison. In Havana, they are clothed and fed, though after years of nakedness, the touch of fabric feels foreign, and the nameless companion soon dies, his body too frail to return to the world that forgot him. Serrano alone sails home to Spain, where his story spreads through every port and palace like wildfire. He becomes a curiosity, a man between myth and proof, telling his tale to nobles and kings, his beard and scars the evidence of everything he says. Emperor Charles V grants him a royal pension of 4,000 pesos for life, drawn from the gold of Peru, a fortune meant to repay a man who had already paid too much. But before he can reach Peru to claim it, Serrano falls ill in Panama and dies, the man who drank turtle blood and defied the sea, ending his days quietly in a bed. Yet his story refuses to die. Chroniclers record it. Maps rename the reef Serrano Bank, and another smaller one nearby, Serranilla, Little Serrano. A century later, Inca Garcilaso de la Vega retells his ordeal in print, and 2 centuries after that, Daniel Defoe writes Robinson Crusoe, echoing Serrano's struggle in nearly every line. Crusoe may be fiction, but Serrano lived it first. The barren island, the fire from stone, the battle to stay human when solitude makes beasts of men. Today, Serrano Bank still lies in the Caribbean Sea, claimed by Colombia, marked by a lighthouse that warns ships away from the same deadly reef. The sand remains white and empty, the coral hard and merciless, the horizon unchanged. Fishermen still pass by, sometimes anchoring for a night, and a few claim to see old stones in the shallows, perhaps the remnants of Serrano's tower, perhaps only coincidence. But the truest monument to Pedro Serrano is not stone or shell. It is the endurance of the human spirit, the refusal to surrender even when logic says surrender is all that's left. He survived by invention, turning turtles into water jars, coral into walls, and despair into ritual. He survived by faith, keeping his fire alive not just as warmth, but as a signal to the world that he still existed. He survived by companionship, learning that even two starving men can be stronger than isolation itself. Change any single moment in his story, the turtles, the stones, the passing ship, and history forgets him. But everything aligned, barely and miraculously, to prove what the sea rarely allows, that a man with nothing but will can outlast the impossible. The fire he built from stones pulled from the sea still burns in memory, a reminder that survival is not luck, it is work, stubborn and sacred. You may never face an island of coral and sun, but your storms will come, and when they do, remember Pedro Serrano, who kept a spark alive for 8 years and refused to let the ocean name him lost. If this true story of survival stirred you, like and subscribe to Forbidden Travel, where we bring history's most unbelievable but absolutely real tales to life every week. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that hope is a craft, that faith is fuel, and that even on the smallest island in the world, a single flame can mean everything. The ocean still remembers the man who refused to drown slowly, and because it remembers, so do we.